It's 5:30 a.m. in Zurich, and I have a confession to make. I have recently been compulsively checking the news on my phone. I go over to CNN, I read the BBC,
there's always some fluff.
Prince Harry gets tested for HIV. I look at the Wall Street Journal and The Economist. I look at 538. What are the chances that Donald Trump could really win the election? I like trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, even though that's somewhat of a foolhardy errand. I don't know, I can't resist. Clickbaity, it's superficial, it's meaningless, I don't need it for my life, and yet there it is. So, I am checking the news too much. I'm checking it in lines, when I'm on escalators, when I'm in the bathroom, whenever I have a spare minute really and I'm a bit bored, when I should be doing other things, when I have presentations to write or a new video to edit, and I think it is an addiction. You know, we're not drawn to things that necessarily give us pleasure all the time. The scientific research has shown that we seem to enjoy a random mixture of punishment and pleasure. That is the thing that we get most drawn to. All punishment or all pleasure, no, that's no good, which explains basically how video games are designed. They're designed to give you some sort of intermittent rewards, but always create new challenges and make things harder for you and give you punishment as well, because it's that mixture that really hooks our brains and gets us trying to optimize that system. So in a similar way, I keep going back to the news. I think another reason why we might be addicted to news is what I'd call the obesity theory. And, well, that's kind of an analogy to how much food we consume. You know, I think that our bodies are pretty well evolved to keep us alive, to make sure that we can survive through famines. And in the past, calories were pretty difficult to come by, so whenever there were a lot of calories around to be had, we would just eat a little bit more and we put on some extra weight, padding for the leaner times, and so that we could survive them. And in a world where calories are scarce, well, that's a very good strategy to have. Now that calories are so much more prevalent, readily available, well, this is a terrible strategy, and it's led to a lot of obesity in a lot of the countries around the world. You know, it's kind of like moths. Moths guide themselves by light sources. And in the past, at night, the only major light sources you'd have would be the stars and the moon and the planets. And those are so far away that if your guidance strategy is keep those light sources at a constant angle to you, then basically you go in a straight line. But once small local sources of light come into being, like candles, well, then that strategy results in circling around the candle and possibly spiraling into the candle, leading to your certain death. So an evolutionary strategy that is adaptive for a historical environment is then horribly maladaptive in this new environment. I feel like it's the same way with how we approach food and possibly the same way with the way we approach information. Information used to be scarce, and it's valuable. Knowledge is power. Who wouldn't want more power? So when information's on offer, I think our brains kind of want it. We take it as much as we can get it. Now it's kind of a maladaptive strategy because a lot of that information is useless to our lives. It really adds nothing, and yet we feel drawn to it. Wasservogel. Did I pronounce that right? Wasservogel. I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong. Then there's another idea about why we need so much news, and it sort of dovetails off this concept called cognitive surplus. This is kind of the next phase in a movement that's been underway since the agricultural revolution, freeing up people's time so that, you know, from the hunter-gatherer days we would spend all our time just maintaining our bodies and finding food for ourselves, really taking care of immediate survival needs. And gradually over time we've become less and less involved. We need fewer and fewer hours to ensure that we can survive. And now we're moving into the next phase of that, where it becomes even more pronounced. Knowledge workers can spend more and more of their time doing passion projects, things that interest them, which is, I think, why we have YouTubers in the first place. But at the same time, I think some of that cognitive surplus is not being used for productive means. I think a lot of it might just be going into a demand for distraction. And so I think there is such a thing now as the distraction economy, where there's all this new free time, if you want to think of it that way. But it's not really free time, it's kind of dead time. You know, that time when you're waiting in line at the supermarket, or, you know, where you're waiting to board a plane, or you're on the bus, or whatever. It's this extra time that we have which we can now fill with stuff. And we like feeling productive. And so that may also be part of the need to pull out the phone and feel like you're using every minute of every day to do something productive. And if you're gathering more information, maybe it doesn't matter what it's about, as long as you're just consuming. Now, this is kind of interesting because a lot of YouTube videos, right, are just playing into the distraction economy. It's how we can support ourselves, is because there are people with time who want to watch the things that we make. But I want to announce in this video that I'm putting myself on a low information diet. That means no more news sites, no more casual surfing. And instead, if I find myself with some dead time, I'm either going to use it to let my mind wander and think over the things I've been contemplating, or I'm going to use it to do something productive, work on the projects that actually need my attention. And I kind of would recommend that you do the same. Try it out just for a little bit. See how it goes to put yourself on a low information diet. You know, there's some real advocates of low information diet, people like Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek, and he recommends that, you know, if you really want to know what's happening in the world, if you want to find out some news, then go and talk to someone and just let them tell you, because then at least you're having a social interaction, right? Maybe talk to a stranger. That's what he would recommend. C.G.P. Gray is another big proponent of the low information diet, and I gotta say, I kind of agree with him, even though I find it very difficult to execute. And then there are people like Brady Haran, who would argue that actually a low information diet is a bad thing, and that you should be taking part in what's happening in the world. You should be aware of everything that's going on, because that is part of being a good citizen of this planet, is being aware of what's happening, the experiences of your fellow human beings. But I think I would disagree with him on that. I think it's really important, you know, what's happening in your local circle, but beyond that, maybe there's very little you can do, and maybe you're just kind of deluding yourself to think that being aware of those things is actually a benefit to anyone. So what happens if we all go on low information diets? I do think that we become more productive because, you know, you're going to use your hours for things that matter. And even if you don't do something that you actually need to get done with that time, I think letting your mind rest is valuable. I think that our brains are designed to spend some of their time just wandering, not tied to any particular idea. And in those moments, I think the things that maybe are deeper in your subconscious may kind of bubble up, and you may have some realizations. It's kind of like when I was in college and I'd be doing exams. If I got stuck on a question or two, I'd often go to the bathroom in the middle of the exam. It was not as a crazy strategy or anything, but I often just found that I had to. And it was frequently when I was in the bathroom that the solution hit me, just kind of bubbled up from somewhere. Like I'd been thinking so hard about it, it blocked me from really seeing the answer. So often when I was just completely distracted, that's when the idea came to me. And what does a world look like in which we have none of that bored time? I think it's valuable, and I'm going to reclaim mine. You want to be bored with me? Let's go for a walk.